Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right. What is it? Who's that supposed to be?
I was stressed. I
that
realized
supposed to be Koba?
It was
No, that was not Koba.
It was angry, right?
It was not angry enough.
Human, do this. Is that?
No.
Work.
No, human work.
That's better. Yeah.
Human
work. Human work.
He never did that.
He got angrier when he pointed at his scar on his face because he was sad because he was scarred by the humans.
He never did what you just did.
Yeah, because I'm bad. I'm worse than Koba.
I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
To his left,
Irina.
And lunging at a wild bear with a spear to save his leader, we have
AJ.
You saved Reese's life.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much.
That's unfortunate that you gave him Koba and you get to be Caesar, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, Noah is not with us tonight, but he will be with us in spirit. He'll be giving us the review at the end, and he is providing the story for this film. So he'll be there with us. His imprint will be on this episode for sure.
I'll be reading this in your honor.
Without Noah, how will we know who's a Chad?
I was thinking about that before we started, and
I think we know who
exactly
who the Chad is.
I'm gonna call him out.
I
haven't read the synopsis, but I feel like he's gonna put it in there.
Yeah. So this week we're talking about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, a film that came out in 2014. It's directed by Matt Reeves, who also directed Cloverfield, Let Me In, War for the Planet of the Apes, the sequel to this film, and the upcoming The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson. So y'all have seen the trailers for that.
We have, and I think that one is one of the ones I've been most excited about since Nolan's. So.
Yeah, this is a director to watch. It's weird though; he hasn't actually directed his own, like, from his mind, original idea. All of his things have either been remakes or adaptations of something that's been done before. Or
I can totally understand that from an artistic level. I feel like as an artist, I am in a similar vein. I'm very bad at coming up with my own ideas, but man, if I am not good at taking other people's ideas and making it better.
and he does such a good job at it too, because Let Me In, an amazing remake, in my opinion. Let the Right One In, obviously, excellent film. Let Me In, though, stands on its own as an excellent horror film. I don't know if y'all have seen this movie. I know you've seen it, Irina.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie stars Andy Serkis, Jason Clarke, Gary Oldman, Kerry Russell, Toby Kebbell, and Cody Smith-McPhee, with a screenplay by Mark Bomback, Rick Jaffa, and Amanda Silver. I didn't know this, but this is kind of technically a remake of the fifth film in the original Planet of the Apes series.
Like we needed that.
I know, but it's a remake, technically, of Battle for the Planet of the Apes. The fifth film in the Planet of the Apes
Reimagined.
series. Yeah, reimagined. No, by Tim Burton's standards.
Yeah, shout out to Tim Burton.
It is reimagined. So, for those that are new to the show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then, towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, AJ, had you seen Dawn of the Planet of the Apes before this episode?
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to see it, but Reese had recommended it, so...
Wait, so I remember we watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes together, and I feel like we maybe started Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but I don't think we actually got through it. Do you remember actually seeing this movie all the way through?
No, you're actually correct. Yeah, you're spot on that. That's what happened.
So you had not finished it?
Yeah, because I don't really have
experience.
a strong recollection of it. I just remember the guy with the one eye.
I don't know why that sounded like a lawyer cross-interrogating some witness, the way you said that. I was like, is it not correct that...
That is
we started
correct.
The first film, watched part of it, and he's like, oh yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. How about you, David?
No, I thought this is one of those ones that you put on for me, but I don't think it was. I know for a fact that I've seen Rise, so there's that, and I did see the I saw Rise, and then I saw War, but I never saw Dawn.
Yeah, we were watching this together, and like halfway through, I asked you, "So, do you remember any of this?" And you were like,
"No,
no."
I thought I did. I was confident I did.
The weird thing is, it's a good sign in some ways that you don't remember, because like it conceptually, it might be really easy to blur a bunch of monkey or ape activity together as like, oh yeah, I've probably seen it.
Yeah. I saw those antics. We don't need to revisit it. It's fine. Irina, how about you?
Yes, I had seen it. I don't recall the exact situation, but I'm pretty sure it was one of those Reese barges in through the front door going like, hey, have you seen this one yet? And
waving his steel book in the air.
How many of those?
I haven't.
How many of those have there been?
He's like, I'm going to put it on. And he does. And I end up watching it because I'm too lazy to leave the couch.
And to answer your question, Reese, many. We all have at least 5 to 10 of those like in our head. Mm-hmm. Where you just come in waving your movie. Guess what we're watching?
So what's your number one then, David?
Oh gosh, I think Sinister might be one of the worst.
That's just because I like to see you squirm.
I know, and that's why it's memorable, because I squirmed a lot.
That's right, you actually did watch Sinister, didn't you?
Because in Reese's Sinister for making me watch it. But another one I think would be, I could say Hellboy, Cure for Wellness, what that stupid movie where they're...
Wow.
No, there's like a sunset involved and like these people on an island, and it was very depressing. It was very artsy.
What?
Sorry, what?
I'll come back to you on that one. There's some
Shaun
famous
of the
actors
Dead.
in it. No.
Oh, you're talking about the what was it? The light between
Yes.
ocean. What
Like
was
Light
that?
Between
It had
Two Oceans or
Alicia
something.
Vikander.
Light Between Oceans? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good movie.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that
What are you
was
talking about? That's a good movie.
David hates sad
I just named like 4 or 5 movies. So
All right. Well, a little background on this movie. Rupert Wyatt, the director of the first film, did not return to this movie because the release window, or the time that the studio wanted this movie to come out, was not long enough. So he was like, I am bailing on this because I don't feel like that's enough time for this to be released. And then the dominoes continued to fall. James Franco did not return because the director Rupert Wyatt was not returning, so that's why you don't see James Franco in this movie.
really the only reason?
I mean, that's what I read. So they started kind of looking for other directors. Other directors considered for this movie were Jeff Nichols, Guillermo del Toro, Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, and J.A. Bayona. Oh, sorry, along with Jay Blakeson, who I'm actually not familiar with his work, but that's what I wrote in my notes here. But yeah, we actually ended up with Matt Reeves here, who read the script. The original script for this movie was going to feature less of Caesar. Caesar was going to be kind of a side role in this movie, and it was going to be pushed a lot further into the future where all of the apes could speak fluently. Matt Reeves decided, or at least suggested, that, hey, maybe we should keep this with a focus on Caesar, pull this back a few years, make it not too far after the first film, and make him the central character of the story. The studio granted his wishes so long as he still met the deadline for this film.
So basically they said, we don't really care as long as we have a movie by this time.
Exactly. They were, and yeah, I mean, Matt Reeves had kind of proved himself at this point with Let Me In and Cloverfield. Competent director.
Turns out he made Deadpool 3 with Caesar, and he got it out on time, so the studio just had to roll with it.
Exactly. But yeah, here we are with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. The sequel to the first one came out 3 years after the first one, 2014. So he did meet that deadline. It did not take him insanely long to get this film out there. So pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. All right. With that said, David, give us that call to action.
That sweet, sweet call to action.
Yeah.
See that ludicrous display last night? No. All right, we're not starting that way.
Oh, I love IT Crowd. I love IT Crowd. It's so good.
So yeah, we are out there on all major podcasting platforms. I think the biggest thing for us is Apple Podcasts. I think that is what affects the algorithm the most. And if you want to help us out and see us climb that chart, I think giving us a review, a 5-star review on Apple, would be very, very big. And if you just want to reach out to us, let us know. We have an Instagram, we have a Twitter. And we love hearing from you guys, which we're slowly getting more and more people, which is awesome.
We're seeing a bit of a surge.
We are. So yeah, please check us out. Give us a review. All of those things I just said, because it is all very helpful for us. So thank you.
All right. So this is the portion, or this is the part of the podcast where Noah comes back in. He's going to give us our story. But David, you are going to read it for us.
Can
you do that for us?
Yes.
We've been through hell together. We spent 4 years. 4 years! Fighting that virus and then another 4 fighting each other. It was chaos. But you all know what we're up against. I need to speak to Caesar! And I want you to know, it's not just about power, it's about giving us the hope to rebuild and reclaim the world we lost.
A pandemic wipes out most of the human race. The apes under Caesar's rule begin to thrive, but unfortunately this is cut short by human intruders who are looking for a way to power their nearby encampment. Koba, the treacherous bonobo, seeks immediate retaliation, and Caesar brings the apes in order to put on a display of strength. Caesar tells the humans that they do not wish to fight, but they will if they must. Unfortunately for Caesar, this won't satisfy Koba, who attempts to undermine him at every turn, sowing discord amongst the apes. Malcolm, one of the humans, knows that in order to keep everyone safe, he must ask Caesar to allow them access to the dam, to which Caesar relents. Koba doesn't like this and more openly rebels against Caesar, to which Caesar pimp slaps him on the floor and Koba scurries off to kill some people. I've got Noah written all over it.
Yeah. So different directors from movie to movie. We got Rupert Wyatt for the first one and Matt Reeves for the second one. I want to ask y'all, what are the big differences between these two films? When y'all watched the first one and this one, what stood out to you about this second entry?
Well, I think in the beginning, it's the most obvious change is that we're focusing primarily on a bunch of different apes. Like, you have a whole ape society. So you can tell right off the bat that you're going to be seeing more monkeys in this one.
It's
more
very
apes.
It's ape forward. Yeah. I'll say that.
Whereas the last one, I think they started with a little bit of the apes, like showing them getting captured, but very quickly transitioned over into the human world, sort of formulating James Franco's character as one of the main actors. Where this one, I don't know what I'm gonna see. Is it gonna be an all ape film? Because that's what it's feeling like. And they kind of just build the world around them and where they've gone from the first movie. You can see they've got more intelligence. There's more communication. They're showing them learning how to write. They have doctors, quote unquote.
I feel like the first movie was all about displaying that transition between a human-led movie to an ape-led movie, where we got to know James Franco's character and all of that, and then it slowly transitioned to Caesar. And this one fully embraces that Caesar is the main character of this story.
Yeah, I think that there's, especially since now we're not following James Franco or Genesis or anything, there's far less of that kind of cheesy sci-fi involvement or intrusion, I would say, into the storytelling. It's like, now we can just get over that part. We don't need that explained anymore. This is just the setting now, and you can enjoy these characters and the progression of the plot, which is what I really, really like about this film. And when we do see humans for the first time here, I don't know about you guys, but there are some movies where I'll be so immersed in a world and then suddenly they throw in like, oh, humans are here too. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no.
They're ruining the party. Like, get out of here.
Like,
come on.
That's the message of this movie, isn't it? That,
okay, yeah.
Well, sorry, not to steal your thunder.
No, I was just saying that I think the only part when I first saw this movie where I felt a little worried was when I first saw the group of humans. And I think that's the point. You're supposed to feel a little worried, like, they're gonna, like, something's gonna happen. You know, like, there's going to be a difference of
there's gonna be drama
opinion
of some
and
sort.
philosophies, and people are gonna get hurt on both sides. Something wrong is gonna happen.
So you share Caesar's sentiments, like, no, there's humans, go.
Yeah.
It was so cool though, the opening of this movie. For one, the score by Michael Giacchino, a big improvement from the first film. I'm not saying the first film had a bad score, but the score for this film seems more just classical and
so much better.
Iconic. And so we kind of oversee the scene of the apes kind of hunting. They're out to get the I guess the elk or the deer. They take down an elk and a bear shows up, and Caesar is kind of protecting his son in this instance here. Just so good. Like, I love how this movie is so calculated and how it's showing these apes, how they're not quite at human level yet, but you can see like the development, how they're starting to figure things out. You know, I think it does such a good job of just displaying their intelligence and just kind of where they're at this point in the story. They don't ever give like kind of a year as to how long passed.
They said something around like a couple years, I believe. I think they said
a few years at least.
They said I think at least 2 winters is what
I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that. It was like 8.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was
I'm pretty sure it was a longer period of time.
But that's one thing that I think is so smart about this film is nothing is developed too fast. Like the apes at this point, they seem like, that's exactly where they would be at, you know? Like they've developed tools, they have this, kind of this society, and they have this, they've built structures, but it doesn't seem like, oh wow, they've advanced insanely far. They
don't have huts and like Adobe. Yeah. It'd be hilarious if we saw like full built houses.
Yeah. And Caesar, it was so wise to have him still be the center of this movie. I don't want to see that movie that Rupert Wyatt was going to make where Caesar is not the center of this. Like, no, that's not a smart idea. No, Caesar definitely needs to still be the center of attention here. Because Andy Serkis is so good in this. Like, yeah, he's scowling throughout most of the movie, but it is like, I live for it. I love everything that he's doing in this film. And his son, too. What's it? Blue Eyes?
Blue Eyes, yeah.
Yeah. Really good. Like, I see the likeness there. I see the relationship. I think it's well established. Apparently he's called Blue Eyes because he's one of the first ones to not be actually... What was that?
Or they vaccinated didn't have the green hue to their irises.
The Genesis whatever. Like, he's one of the first like pure ones who's still smart.
I think his representation is very interesting because of all of them, he has, in my mind, kind of the most human-looking face, and it's more often than not kind of deadpan.
Yeah.
So when you're introduced to his character, there's already this kind of seated tension that I had as a viewer about him, where I'm like, I don't really know what this character is about. They don't reveal much. They seem to be a little at odds with Caesar, mostly because you're thinking, oh yeah, he's just a teenager.
The rebellious teen.
He's rebellious. Yeah. But there's something kind of unnerving about his blank face sometimes, and I don't know if that's intentional, but I think for the rest of the film, you're wondering like, what side is this character on? Are they gonna like completely turn around?
I think that means that they were doing it right because in the end he's impressionable. He's a blank slate, and his deadpan kind of shows that he doesn't know where his allegiance falls. Like, he wants to follow his dad, but he doesn't always agree with him. So he's going through that stage where he has to make his own choices, and he's just absorbing. And I really like how they did that, because I had no idea where his character was going to go.
Yeah.
We're also reintroduced to Koba, who's kind of not quite reformed, but he's like part of the group, and you're kind of led to believe that, he's kind of assimilated with Caesar, and now, maybe you can trust him a little bit more in this movie.
Well, he saves his life. They have a very good camaraderie. So.
Exactly. So that's one smart thing about this movie, because Koba in the first movie was so obviously, like, drawn as this villainous ape, and in this one you're kind of like, let's see the good side of Koba. Let's see, like, why he is the way that he is. So I love seeing him save Caesar. It kind of establishes him as a, this ape actually can do good. He is protecting his leader. He's not just all in it for himself.
I thought he was the main character.
Koba?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to catch up here a minute, but was Caesar the white-looking monkey?
What did you see?
Well, did we get to the part where they go to get the weapon? Like,
what did you watch, AJ?
The stop-motion movie.
Oh, no.
Kubo and the two strings.
Oh, no. I was really trying to figure that one out. I was like,
that's good. That's good. I like that one.
That's the latest we've had that.
I know that was a very late.
When you said what, I was thinking, is he actually talking about something in the movie? And I was trying to, like, kind of recover from that. No, not Kubo. No,
so back to the real movie here. I think a cool thing, and this might be directorial style or not, but it's focused on the apes themselves, and the dialogue is all, you're reading the subtitles of it, and they have the grunting, and then when they encounter the humans, they're kind of vocalizing, but the silence of it, the communication, is really important to the feel of the movie as well.
Yes,
and it brings that intimacy of their society.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's this is going back to something I was wanting to say as far as the director's choice to, dial back the years that were supposed to pass and then kind of keeping them from speaking fluently. I think it maintains them as their own individual species. I think if you go in the direction of making them too human, it just feels like a self-servicing, it's really about humans now, which it kind of is, but this is sort of supposed to be about Caesar. It's supposed to be about, this hope from the first film that's carried over. And I think if you were to push this movie too far into the future, you would lose audiences.
Yeah.
I would feel kind of estranged from these characters. Like I wouldn't know how to relate to them.
It would be so.
The transition works well between the movies too. Like, I didn't know how much I cared for, the end credits of the virus spreading of the first movie. And then we get that, the title sequence here, which, in today's, with COVID, the pandemic, everything was very creepy, actually.
Very relevant. Yeah. That's what I was noticing.
But it kind of it tells you what happened and why we're here, but it still maintains the focus on Caesar and the apes instead of, the human kind of side of things, but we're up to speed enough to, understand what's going on. So that was done well. And a creative approach.
I think it's the thing that he did very cleverly is that, or, the whole team did, is I don't feel a huge difference from the first film. Obviously there's a difference because, that was kind of in the glory days, like what you said, Reese, when in the previous episode, that it's now supposed to be looked upon as the golden years when everything was, they were blissfully unaware. But there is that he maintained that continuity with both characters and the way society would be at this point, while still telling a story he was interested in telling. And I think we're all kind of hitting on this point, is that Caesar is the heart of it. Like, if you don't have Caesar, then I don't think this movie would have landed.
It would have been so unwise to divert from that path of having, like, not having Caesar as your main boy. So I'm, as much as I respect Rupert Wyatt as the director for the first film, the decision to move away from Caesar for the second one I don't think would have been wise.
I think he had, based on the first film, he had very interesting points to make. Like, there was an interesting story there, and I would be curious to see what platform he would take in the sequel.
The thing is, I think his idea would really be a great idea for, like, the fourth film. Right. But I feel like you need to see this Caesar thing through.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Caesar himself isn't like a typical, like, you know, action leader. Like, he's always listening. He's, you know, interacting with Rocket in their, you know, kind of powwows, the circle, like, you know, like almost, you know, caresses him by the face, just the understanding, and even listens to Koba and understands his anger, and, you know, he says, we will make this right. But he's never first to act. He's always kind of, you know, almost motionless, almost to a fault, but he still has that strength. Has that leadership characteristic, but it's not the, you know, kind of wartime military hero.
Exactly.
And it is a step back from where he was going in the first movie, because it was so, he had that so much passion in his breakout. Here he's like so observant and, you know, the opposite. He's not quick to react. He's just there to basically protect.
Well, and I think this transitions nicely into the next part where they have their interaction with the humans, right? And one of them shoots Rocket's kid. He doesn't die. Ash, and
it's been like 2 years since they've seen humans, and suddenly Ash and
Blue Eyes
run across a human. It's this one guy
just so happens to be the most annoying human.
As Noah would say, this is the Chad among the group.
Yeah, he is definitely the Chad of this movie. He shoots Rocket. It's not a fatal blow. It gets him in the arm. Caesar reacts strongly. Also, we have Jason Clarke's character, who observes the apes, sees that they are not just your average ape as they're kind of retreating.
Right.
And then Koba kind of convinces Caesar at this point that, hey, we need to show some strength against these humans because, they're still here. We have to protect our own. Koba, of course, is kind of more aggressive about it. He wants to
just attack.
Yeah, he's like, we need to attack these humans.
You know what's a good defense is a good offense.
Caesar's a little more calculated about it. He's like, no, we will show our force. We'll show our numbers.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie. I know it's not like the biggest action sequence, but Caesar's sort of decision to go and meet the people and show them their numbers, and showing how many of them are riding on horses. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, the culture. It's always the show of strength, right? We've talked about this, but
and
seeing them
paint.
all.
Yeah,
exactly.
The war paint too.
Showing them ride in slowly, it makes me think of like The Last Samurai or something, where they're like slowly riding into town, and people are like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
That I felt the weight of that scene, and I remember Gary Oldman's character saying that's a lot more than 80. But I think what made it the most powerful is the fact that, you know, they have our main protagonist meet, you know, the other protagonist, and Malcolm, thank you. They meet Malcolm, and they toss back the bag that the humans left. So showing like a peace offering.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we're not here to destroy y'all.
It's very powerful. It shows like we are intelligent enough to not attack you when we could.
It's so relatable because you see this kind of thing all the time throughout history and even today. Like the two different perspectives on how you should approach a situation, and there's, you know, someone vying for the aggressive approach where, like, no, attack them before they attack us. But then the other saying, like, no, we don't know their intentions, but we do need to show some kind of display so they don't mess with us. But, you know, peace is the best option.
What is the Teddy Roosevelt quote that fits perfectly here? Like, speak softly, carry a big stick.
Big stick, yeah.
Big stick, not sausage, AJ.
But anyway, it's so well done, and there's so much you can unpack and talk about just from this setting, and the way I think something that is almost kind of like low-hanging fruit in movies that I've seen that have to deal with political issues such as these, or just negotiations, is anytime there is a grouping of people that you're supposed to be looking at the perspective of, they always cast the humans as like pretty much all out evil and stupid, which I think is a bit dumb to represent them all that way.
Yeah, and this movie does not do that.
There are definitely some, and this movie does show them, but they do such a good job of passing the baton onto the human side to see, like, no, there are reasonable humans. There are people that, even though they do the wrong thing, they had good intentions, you know?
Yeah.
So and that adds to the tension where you're like, oh, I don't really want anyone to get hurt on either
they're
side.
doing the right thing.
Yeah, and that's a good opportunity to talk about our human characters in this movie, which I feel like are done better than they were in the first film.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we got Jason Clarke, Gary Oldman, Kerry Russell, and Cody Smith-McPhee. I don't know them by name, unfortunately, in the movie.
So Malcolm.
Yeah, Malcolm.
Dreyfus, Ellie, and Alexander.
Good job.
And I think, so what Irina was saying about, the stereotypical human point of view, Dreyfus is a good example of that, Gary Oldman's character, because he's not, he's a sympathetic character. He's not this caricature of a bloodthirsty, warmongering, kill them all. Like, he kind of ends up that way, but it's out of a true sense of survival, not, malice.
Right.
Yeah.
But the way he takes control of the situation, the mob, getting on the bullhorn right away and, calming people down, it's kind of one of those positions where someone's thrust into leadership and they're a natural leader, but they don't choose leadership.
Right.
So he is kind of uneasy, on a back foot. Like, you can sense that they've all gone through loss. He's not this, complete Chad or jerk or whatever. Yeah. And it's just, how they cope with their survival.
He's also actually very rational, and you see that in a lot of his dialogue. Like, what is that line where he's trying to explain to Malcolm that, like, once these people realize that how close we are to not having power, it's going to take a lot more than a bullhorn to calm them down. Like, we won't be able to actually control them, and that's going to be worse, So, like, I love representation of leadership that, although they might be misguided, they do have really good points. Like, it's and that's kind of the tragedy of the situation.
So in my research, I think one of the biggest things that kind of it's something you think about when you're watching it, but when somebody was explaining it, it just kind of like opened it up more in my head, which is that nobody is necessarily evil in this. It's all based on the perspective that character has and the amount of information that they have. And that's why it makes it more relatable. You can see each of theirs as the audience. We're sort of like in the middle, watching all of their own perspectives. Koba, obviously, you want to think of him as a villain, but it's so
you see his side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just like he's evil,
lie.
Wants to kill humans.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the priorities of Malcolm and Caesar are with their immediate family unit, doing what's right, trying the best, but to protect, kind of the small circle within, and, help in an aid and assistance kind of way, where Dreyfus and Koba are also trying to do the right thing, survive, and, kind of do the, a little bit more future projection of their large group, the species.
Right.
I totally agree with you. The Dreyfus and Koba characters completely mirror each other, where they're like in that role where they want to preserve their race, but they are also willing to go to the extremes to do so.
Yeah.
They're not looking for peace exactly. They are
because they can't see the other side. They can't put themselves in the shoes of their opponent.
Yeah. So not. And even not necessarily that they don't believe in peace, but they somehow grew up in such a fashion where they believed one can't live with the other.
Yeah. Well, they've both been burned so hard.
Yeah.
Because we see that scene with Koba where Caesar's talking him down, saying like, hey, we can't do this. And Koba's like, he points to his wounds and he's like, human work, pointing to his various scars. And yeah, you feel it in that moment.
They tortured him.
And also with Dreyfus, he's like, you see that his family is passed away because of this virus.
And they even go into that with the Chad character explaining like, with Malcolm and the other ones, like, oh yeah, how many family members did you lose? You're trying to justify that the apes are fine, but they are the reason that everyone died.
Yeah,
and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Chad character's name is Kurt.
I don't know. Chad sounds better.
Well, I mean, I think we tried to make a point before to actually acknowledge the character more than just Chad.
Yeah,
right.
That's fair.
So we get our ape show of force to the humans back in San Francisco. Obviously, we had our line, oh, that's much more than 80. There's a ton of them. And then Malcolm kind of makes a plea to Dreyfus that, hey, we need to get this power, but we also don't need to start a war. So he kind of pleads to him like, hey, I will go back there. I will try to make this happen and get our power back up and running. Just let me do this. And Dreyfus gives him like 3 days or something to do this. So he goes back in.
It's always 3 days.
Yeah, he goes back in, meets back up with Caesar. Caesar's a little apprehensive about this whole thing. But Caesar has interacted with humans before. He's not had totally bad experiences with humans. So he kind of lets it happen. And thus this kind of relationship between the two of them forms. I think Matt Reeves does an excellent job of, kind of showing these two characters at odds, but also showing that maybe they do have something in common and maybe they do see something in each other. And honestly, this is one of those sequels where it respects the original, even though it kind of seems like it knows it can do better.
Yeah.
It acknowledges what the original did. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to build off of that, and this is going to be better. And this is one of those ways that it does it, where it's just like, yeah, we'll use the Caesar that we had from the first film, and we'll take this new character, and we will build this new relationship. And it does it so well, I feel like.
I think
dawn of a new friendship.
It's, with Matt Reeves, I just have to mention, like, that I love the scene when he first shows up at their village that they've built, and they just are carrying him like through the center to Caesar, and just that camera shot of his face where he's just like in complete terror, knowing that he can't do a thing.
Like, nope,
he's like, whatever happens, because I cannot fight in this situation. He does such a good job interacting with all of the characters, and I'm sure it makes it a lot easier having actual humans to act with.
Yeah.
But and that goes out to the actors playing the apes and all of those characters here, where if they come in with the right intensity, with the right mindset, I feel like it makes it easier for these other actors just playing themselves to really engage. So and I feel like that is seen on screen, like it's almost seamless, like the way they interact.
Well, and a lot of that is just how much training they went through as well, and we touched on it in Rise, but the amount of ape training they had to go to, and I think it was, what's his name, Terry Notary, who plays Rocket, as well as many other characters in this. I mean, they have 100, 200 different actors playing apes in this, but he's the one who trained them. And seeing the the behind the scenes without the CG, where they're wearing the dots on them and he's interacting with them on set. I mean, it's different than holding up a stick with a tennis ball. Like they lock eyes. And it's weird because you can see that they're acting like apes, but it just feels so real. The tension. I was trying to imagine if I was there interacting with Andy Serkis and he was acting like that. Like I would probably just go with it. Like, yep, he's an ape.
No, a lot of these behind-the-scenes shots that I've seen from this movie, I don't know if I could take it seriously, but there's
I bet you would.
All these actors are so professional, though.
Oh, yeah.
They've got their suits on. They've got the headgear that like shoots the light at their face, and all of it is like.
I love that each one of them has the character name on their suit as well, so you can see Koba and Caesar kind of just written on their kind of their chest.
I don't know if it fits in here, but I think it's one of the most important things for the performance acting here on the Apes side. The way Andy Serkis described trying to portray an ape in mocap was that he was in his brain seeing it as a human trapped in an ape body. I think he uses that in so many different interviews that it's like he's intelligent, you're intelligent, but you can't quite get it out there because you're hindered by the form you're in.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like forcing it out as he goes. So it's amazing.
Yeah. So how do you feel about Caesar and Koba, the relationship between these two? How do you feel about this kind of diverging path between these two characters where at first they are kind of in agreement, and the more it goes, Koba kind of starts to stray from the herd here and disagree with Caesar, thinking that he should that they need to show more force against the humans.
Well, just the dichotomy, like it's so well done because they start you off loving him. And then slowly you can just see the tension rising as Koba wants to follow him. It's not like he hates Caesar secretly. I can see another movie where Koba is pretending.
The thing is, you can see that Koba wants to be on top, but also he's fine with Caesar.
Well, I think he truly loves Caesar. From what I gathered, is that he would follow Caesar to the end if Caesar did the stuff that Koba wanted, Like,
he's utterly convinced that the humans are a threat. Like you see his agitation and thinking about their situation, and whenever he confronts Caesar, it's always about why are you doing this? You're not thinking. You're blinded by your love for the humans. They are not to be trusted. Like none of it is like you're incompetent. All this stuff. It is still supplicating, and he knows his place, but it's just he is overwhelmed by his experience with the humans.
Yeah.
There's so much hate.
The thing is, the smart thing, though, is it's completely understandable why Koba feels the way that he does.
Yeah.
Because, yes, he has been horribly treated by humans.
Imagine if you were tortured by aliens, Reese.
Yeah.
How would you feel about aliens in the future if someone wanted you to be friends with them?
Not great.
Not great.
Not just that. That's all you know of humans.
Yeah.
Like, that was his entire existence until he was freed by Caesar.
Yes, exactly. And it's so smart that they have you kind of sympathize with him at the same time knowing that, this guy is beyond, he cannot be repaired.
Caesar himself even says Koba learned hate from the humans, but nothing else.
Yeah. Exactly.
Such a good line.
Yeah. So at this point in the story, Koba is beginning to take a couple of apes along with him to check out the humans and see what they're all up to. Obviously, throughout all this, no matter what Koba finds, he's still going to report back to Caesar that, hey, we got to do something about this. But yeah, he kind of comes across a couple of guys just firing off their guns. Just at
I don't know why that's so comical.
Random targets.
It's like you're in this society where obviously ammunition and guns are, like a prime thing to have. And they're shooting it off like they got just people making it.
I will say, here's one of my few flaws with this movie is the scene when Koba comes up on these two guys firing off their guns. These guys have already seen the apes come up to the settlement and clearly appear smarter than normal apes are. And they treat this ape like this is a normal ape. No, you've seen these apes act more intelligently already.
I agree, but I don't know. I'm trying to imagine if I was in their scenario. They're not the smartest guys, and I don't think they're evil guys either. Yeah. I think they're like, oh, hey, there's an ape there. They're ready to shoot him, but then when he starts acting like, I don't know, maybe there are other apes out there that aren't evil.
They give him Johnny Walker Blue. They're the type that gives the monkey the cigarette. So
I noticed that too. I love that, but they had the label facing away.
Yeah, it's that is one of those things where I feel like this this scene, at least the portrayal of these two guys, is a little out of place with the way this whole society is being run. Because I can't imagine any of the people in this city or these survivors actually being okay with a couple guys just shooting off rounds in some part of the location. But the thing is, I can still manage to explain it away in some fashion. Like maybe there was just kind of this understanding where they were the only two like military dudes that happened to be a part of this band of survivors, and they're just like, okay, well, you guys just do your thing over there, and we'll do ours.
Yeah.
That does, like Reese said, this does kind of lead to the discussion of, well, let me say this one thing and that kind of leads to another, but the some flaws are a little bit of the larger world building and the scenario that they're in. You know, we see the almost, I don't want to say hovel, but they're obviously struggling. Like if they run out of gas, then they're screwed. But then there's this military base that's flush with all this other stuff, and they just, you know, everything's got bottomless mags, even in the later part of the movie, just unlimited ammunition and all this other stuff. And somehow they've made it this far, but they haven't connected with anybody else. So some of that stuff doesn't really click, but you're not invited to think about it too much. So it's okay. And then,
it's something I only thought about it because I had seen this movie multiple times.
Yeah.
Upon first viewing, it didn't even come across to me.
Yeah, because they do such a good job at the immediate scenery and world building, like the camp of the apes, you know, all the crisscross timbers and, everybody just kind of sitting there still. And like even when Malcolm is brought as a prisoner before Caesar on the Pride Rock or whatever you call it, supplicating, like he's all covered in mud. So he is brown himself and blends in with everybody to like kind of equate them. So a lot of the scenery and the filmography of it, or photography, all that stuff is done very well from the direction of Matt Reeves. And then you have the lushness of the forest, the flowing water, the rain all the time. And the water is what the humans need actively. And then you go back to the stark, masonry, concrete, stone that's all dry of the humans, but they have the advanced technology and that kind of stuff. Or the medicine. So they each have something that the other side needs, and where they meet in the middle is always the conflicting point. And the best example, and I wish they hit home or hit this nail harder, was that scene with Alexander and the gangster of love, Maurice. Him teaching him how to read. I love that scene. I wish they, leaned into that more, because that would really help with Alexander's development, and then that would mirror Blue Eyes and his growth as well.
I mean, honestly, anytime Maurice is on screen is a good scene. I feel like this movie could have used more Maurice.
Yeah, Karen Konoval as Maurice. So good. So good.
I just love the idea of this orangutan having just kind of... They're definitely the more wise of the group. And Caesar is very wise, but I think Maurice, in some ways, might be even more.
Mm-hmm. And that's why he's an advisor.
Yeah. So, and I think that's perfect. But I liked the idea of this character just being a little bit dry humored as well. Sort of eye rolling all the time. Yep. That's kind of the impression I get.
He's too smart. He's too smart for his own good. Like he's
the one that teaches the young ones.
Yeah, which I love too. He's like the professor in the group. Although his teachings ended up being no more than apes don't kill ape. So,
actually, going back to your comment about how Maurice was teaching, the young apes, teaching them how to read, and basically their doctrines or their
I guess the morals of their society.
Their moral code, I guess. And at its basics, like ape no kill ape, and then the second one was what was the second one?
Something about education or learning and I think it was covered, but I can't remember.
No, that was the third one.
Oh,
there was something in the middle, but the third one was knowledge is, and so I was actually going to that sentence there. Oh, apes together strong was the second one. But the third one was knowledge is, and it's blocked out by a couple young apes. And in a video you put on, it was kind of alluded to that this was blocked out on purpose because at the center of this film is like, is knowledge a good or bad thing? And most people think of knowledge as beneficial, but it can also go the other way, where knowledge creates discord and chaos and ruin in certain scenarios. So it's very interesting to talk about that.
Well, that seems to be, in my opinion, the biggest message this movie is trying to get across, is that the apes are almost in this like Goldilocks zone of perfection where they're smart, they're learning, but they haven't
just right.
They haven't quite got the intelligence enough to turn on each other yet. Yeah. And this is the movie where it shows you that they have gained enough intelligence.
This is the part of the movie where they don't feel like they're human. They're like something else.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we can still be perfect. We don't have to be human because human is flawed.
But by having that intelligence, they are inherently human. They are flawed, and they are becoming just the people they resent.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's the message of this movie.
Exactly.
That is, at the end, it's confirmed. Hence the line at the. Oh, we'll get to it. No, I'll hold off on it. Yeah. So Caesar allows the group, Malcolm and the rest of the people, to come in and go to the plant. The dam, and get the electricity running.
Gotta get that sweet, sweet hydroelectric power, baby.
Yep. Obviously, what's his name, Andrew? The guy who sucks.
Kirk.
Yeah, Kirk brings a weapon in and kind of ruins it for the whole group.
So
this guy, like, come on.
If there's a villain in this, it's him, and it's so minimal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, like, Caesar tosses the weapon out. They kind of have a... Caesar sees kind of eye to eye with Malcolm. They kind of feel like they're, like-minded in a way. Look, can we talk about Malcolm real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Jason Clarke. I think he's definitely an upgrade from James Franco. He's one of those actors who you see him in a lot of films, but you don't really remember him. As sad as that sounds,
there are a lot of them.
But he's always good. I really like Malcolm in this movie. I think he's really great at displaying empathy and just he has heart. He cares about the apes. He is for the humans, but he's also like he thinks that they and the creatures can coexist. So. Yeah. I really like Jason Clarke in this role. I think he's a definite upgrade. And the actors in this movie across the board, I feel like, are better than the first film, save for John Lithgow, who I think did an excellent job in the first film.
John Lithgow was great.
Ellie, who is his wife, is also sorry, I shouldn't say wife because it's not. Which I loved how they set it up. It's more like a companion. They both lost their loved ones, and now they are together. And
Carrie Russell.
Another one of those actresses that you might see, similar to the male lead, where you like, oh, I know this actress, but I don't know where.
I saw her in a movie called Waitress.
I saw her in August Rush. And
Mission Impossible 3.
Yeah, okay, well, we all know more than most, I think. Calling everybody else out. We're so much smarter than you. She's not the A-list actress that you think of like everybody else. I think they were trying too hard to have A-list comedians for the leads, and this one they went with sort of like the lesser knowns, and I think that helps it a lot.
I think she is listed as his second wife. I don't know how much that distinction matters, but
I mean, maybe they got remarried. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like in a scenario like this, they're probably as
not
close
signing
to
a
married
wedding
as they could be.
So this movie's really good at ramping up tensions between these two groups. The scene after they get out of the plant is, especially when they discover the shotgun, is like, oh, okay. Like, you already get the sense that these two groups are at odds with one another, but once they uncover the shotgun, it's like, next level.
Yeah. Well, and even from there, I mean, just to speed this process along, because we've talked about this a lot, they even recover that ground. Malcolm and Caesar still go through a secondary trial, and they come to terms again to work on the dam, and this time the apes are going to help. They're going to destroy all their weapons, kind of thing. But this is where I think the turning comes for Koba. Mm-hmm. Where this is where he goes from being
Koba
100% for Caesar.
Yeah. Yeah, that fight was... You felt it, man. It was...
Oh, yeah.
The tension in Andy Serkis's face when he says, like, you love humans more than apes. There's that really long pause where he's, like, bolstering himself up and just the anger rising. You're like, oh, shit, it's about to hit the fan.
Yep. The moment where he like, comes within an inch of actually killing... Koba, only to say ape does not kill ape, is so good.
Well, that's AJ, you were mentioning how his character is more calculated here. And I think that's important to know for this scene, because you could just chalk it up to, Koba's retaliated one too many times that Caesar just blew up. But I think the point is Caesar actually sees the apes as superior. So for Koba to make that kind of comment kind of gets his anger, and he has that moment where he sort of has a lapse of judgment, but also combined with he meets halfway between human reasoning and ape reasoning, where you have to subjugate to be leader, in some degree. Like, he had to step down to that kind of role where it's you gotta beat them into submission for a moment to be in control. So it's just such an interesting scene to kind of unpack.
That was really my takeaway too, is every time that Caesar does really any action, like, you can tell he's reticent to, like, lay the hammer down on anybody. Like, but he postures himself, he establishes himself as the dominant, the alpha of the pack social order, because he knows that's what their social order is. That is what is expected of him. If he, shows weakness, then he, everything goes into chaos. So he's reluctant to, beat someone up to show dominance, but that's how their society maintains stability. So he does it when necessary in a controlled fashion. And then, he goes a little bit, he said, Koba, this is enough, like, stop.
And alternatively, for Koba, this shows that this is the first part where you have an example where he is not ape either. Because even though he was beaten down, like, you can see on his face that he's like, I'm just playing the part at this point. I have my own motives, The
deception starts taking full control.
Yeah, he deviates then, like, for sure.
I also gotta say, this is not off what y'all were saying, but the visual effects in this movie are extraordinary. This was at least like twice the budget of the first film. I cannot believe what they were able to accomplish with this movie in terms of visual effects. Like, it looks amazing. And this was made in 2014. Can you believe how ambitious this movie is?
I know.
Like, you have Caesar as your main character in this. It is a fully digital character.
Yep.
Koba as, like, probably the second build character. Mm-hmm. Jason Clarke is in there as well. Maybe, like, third build character.
I mean, there's a lot of apes in this. A lot of CG apes.
But this movie looks extraordinary, and I think all the visual effects work is amazing.
Shout out to Weta Workshop.
Except for that bear at the beginning. I feel like that was...
I disagree. I didn't think it was terrible.
I thought it was good. No, I thought it was good, but it was like less photoreal than, the apes themselves.
I mean, I don't know, man. It was so good that until you brought it up now, I didn't even realize it wasn't. I wasn't even thinking that it could have been a fake bear.
I think it's such a small part of the film too that you don't really, you're not bothered by it even.
Yeah. And they're not shy about using, full focus on the apes and everything. Like, if you watch the camera motion, everything is such slow, subtle motions, the panning and everything. And even, stationary shots letting the ape come past the point of view of the lens, the camera, whereas others, they could shy away from the quality. They hide things by, fast motion blur, that kind of stuff. Here, everything's on full display, exposed, so you can pick it apart if it was bad. Yeah. But here, they're like, here it is. We're doing a good job, and it doesn't lend unfortunately, it has the effect of, in my opinion, there's a little bit of sense of gravity, an impact lost on some of the characters and the scene because it doesn't have that quick pace until the end. But at the same time, like, it really fully establishes the realism of it. And then,
it's extraordinary.
Michael Giacchino's score is there to bolster and supplement it.
Yeah, score is so much better. So good. Let's move on with the story there.
Koba, having found a gun, formulates a plan. He will attempt to kill Caesar using the gun and frame the humans and burn their home. The plan works, and he gains command of the apes, leading them to war with the nearby people. There is much bloodshed, but fortunately for everyone, Caesar didn't die. It was only a flesh wound. Now Caesar must put a stop to Koba's tyranny and bloodlust. After getting his wounds patched up by Malcolm, he challenges Koba to a duel of sorts. Koba is losing and decides to fight dirty, but Caesar is just that much more alpha than him and body slams him into the abyss. Koba falls. Caesar reclaims his throne, but it's not over. War is on in the horizon, and the apes must prepare. Thus ends Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
All right. So what do y'all think of Koba kind of pulling a Scar and deciding to betray Caesar and ultimately shooting him and framing it on the humans? This was a big moment in this movie.
Yeah.
This is where it turned truly like The Lion King for me, honestly. Where it's not exactly one for one.
Definitely not.
But,
Scar didn't shoot him.
Yeah. But Koba's definitely the Scar of the story in a way.
In a way, yeah. I think that he is a lot more amiable and understandable than Scar.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing I wish I could have seen was a little more battle from him internally, I guess. Like, I can totally get him doing a 180, but I wish I saw more examples of him acting out kind of unchecked, in different ways. I'm still fine with the progression here, but there is a bit of a leap that's taken that I felt could have used just maybe one more scene with Koba so
Oddly
that you
enough,
get to see him as an individual.
Yeah. Oddly enough, the thing that bridges that gap, because I felt the same way, the scene that helped transition his, duplicitousness, being, able to manipulate things and lie and turn things, was when he goes to steal the gun and how he acts as the dumb ape and then immediately just shoots him. Like, that shows that he does have that conniving underside. If they didn't have that scene, then it would be, like, where'd this come from? Because before, like we talked about, he still respects Caesar. Yeah. And then he goes to the point where he, shoots him. Or manipulates his son.
Yeah.
So for me, this scene did still lack a certain impact when Caesar is shot. Like, I didn't feel like stuff hit the fan right away. It was just like, okay, that's bad.
It felt,
but it didn't have that impact for me personally. I don't know. How do y'all feel?
I felt it was a little sudden, and clearly I didn't think Caesar was dead because, like, anyone that dies off screen didn't necessarily die. So, but I think in terms of Koba, I like that theory where he's, he plays the dumb ape. He kind of entertains them into a sense of putting them at ease, and then he takes advantage. If that had been kind of placed a little more in the beginning with Caesar, because you could totally argue that he's just sort of chumming up so that he can be the next in line, but my immediate instinct with him in the beginning was oh, he's kind of helping Blue Eyes and encouraging him, like when he got his scratches from the bear, he's saying like, hey, scars build character, that kind of thing. And you're like, oh, he's kind of like a nice uncle,
Mm-hmm.
But if there was maybe just a moment where he's kind of playing up to Caesar's expectations, and then I don't know exactly how you would do it, but if there was a scene where you could understand somehow that he had ulterior motives.
Well, I don't think he did have ulterior motives.
No, that's the thing. That's why the sudden change feels kind of off.
Well, I don't think it was that sudden. I think that the second he got the shit kicked out of him by Caesar, that was kind of like, I'm going to get his approval and then I'm going to go kill him. Like, I think he was done. I think that was the marker.
I would feel that if he was truly loyal to Caesar, like I was led to believe, like he would explore every single other option and not, assassinate him.
Yeah.
Because their social order is about the alpha and respect, and they directly challenge them in public to assume the dominant position, not the underhanded knife in the back kind of thing.
I think they're smart. I think they're smarter than that. I think that there is that underlying ape nature where if you lose the alpha, you just go back into place. But I think I don't think Koba's about that. He's smarter than that. And I think that for the greater good of the people, which he truly believes in, he's going to override everything that they had in place. And he even framed it where Caesar has kind of a heroic death. I don't think that was his main goal. But, I mean, he kills Caesar in a way and tries to frame it as if, the humans killed Caesar. Let's fight for Caesar, Yeah. He still is trying to hold him up. I think that he just has his fear of the humans is more powerful than the line of command. Well,
yeah, and that's where, I'm with Irina here, is if they establish more of a continuity of him taking that, quote-unquote human aspect of the deceit. As Caesar said, Koba only learned hate from the humans. That's all he learned. And then have that crossover where he is becoming the bad side or assuming that bad characteristic of humans instead of the traditional ape pack structure, and breaking from that I guess, without that jump. Basically, I'm agreeing with Irina. There is still a jump. You can still have him, be manipulative and conniving, but it was still pretty big gap.
Here's the thing. I don't think movies have an amount of time to set up something, and it is not a lot of time. Like your movie has to be 2 hours long. You got to set up this rivalry between these two characters, and it did the most that it could with this. I think it set up Koba well enough, like he is in disagreement with Caesar. And there's some crucial scenes in this movie where it sets up the disagreement. And I feel like it follows through at about the right time. If this were a TV show, it'd probably take a little longer to set up that scene. But I think it happens at about the right time. We see this betrayal at the right time. Like, I agree. There could be a little more kind of, there's some missing scenes in there that we could have had that could set up Koba. It's more, disagreeing with Caesar.
I actually think that you don't even have to have extra scenes. It's just with the character of Kirk, the one that pulls the gun on everybody. He has. Anytime I see him on screen, I feel tension because I'm like, he's gonna do something to mess things up.
Yeah.
I don't feel that with Koba all the time. I feel he is intended to be a villain, and I know at some point that will happen, but he doesn't feel unhinged for at least the beginning of the film. Like, if there was just some kind of reaction in the beginning where he's a little bit unchecked, he's a little bit more violent than the others, I could feel that, like, all it takes is just like one more straw,
and that's where I see the first film helping this situation. Because you got to know Koba in the first film as this kind of unhinged ape who's been treated
He's ready to
poorly.
kill humans.
Yeah, and the job of the second film is to kind of reel it back in, be like, oh, Koba actually does have feelings that you can sympathize with and you can identify with, and then actually pump it back up to be like, oh, yeah, he's unhinged.
I know what scene we're missing in this. It's the one thing that the Lion King may have done a lot better, and it's the be prepared. We need a musical montage of him getting his minions.
We definitely do not.
Koba needs to get the apes together and march in line to go kill Caesar.
No, we have our be prepared moment in this, and it does not need to be sung to the rafters. It's fine.
Be prepared.
I think, and this is probably a minority opinion, so we'll see how this lands. I think actually the weakness in the tension and the contrast between Koba and Caesar is Caesar. I felt that his character is definitely propped up by the arc from the first movie. Without knowing the first movie, Caesar is almost too flat in this movie. Like I know what his internal dialogue is because I'm supposed to know it, but I don't see it presented on his character on screen. He's too flat, too contemplative without having, I don't see the internal struggle of him, the dilemma of choosing humans or his family or the apes. And
I agree with you until the moment where they get to James Franco's home, where we
but that's at the end of the movie.
Yeah, we get to see that side of Caesar, the human or ape side of Caesar comes out.
But at that point, it's already past him and Koba's conflict, really. It's already at its head. But in setting up Koba's betrayal, all of his antagonism is bouncing off of a flat wall instead of, another dynamic character. And so if we had another dynamic force where there is more tension and struggle within and without, so Caesar battling himself and battling Koba's pressures, that would have been more dynamic.
It could have been enhanced even more if the character of Ash instead wasn't Rocket's son, but Koba's son.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, where are your standards lying, Caesar?
That would have been better.
I think that would have made the you love humans more than apes argument a little stronger in my mind between Koba and Caesar. But I still love the way it pans out here. Like I love
it being Caesar's son.
Yeah.
And all of this.
Going back to
felt
Rocket,
like those scenes with Blue Eyes were almost obligatory. Like I needed more of that development, and that would have helped with Caesar's internal struggle.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the dissent in the fact that I think that you don't have to have a strong vocal, emotional differ with the antagonist to have a good character. I think that he was you're saying he's flat, and I see what you mean by that because he's very slow and methodical. But I think there are people like that, and I think I don't know if it's because I saw the first one and I translated that over, but I could see every sort of calculation he was making, his reading people's eyes, reading the other apes, trying to form the best solution. It wasn't, obvious, and maybe that would get lost to some audiences, but it wasn't lost to me, and I thought for me it was perfect. And maybe for a general audience it doesn't. But
no, I agree with you, David.
Well,
I think that his calculation and slow pan is what this needed.
That's where it's tricky because I got that too. I don't think that the average audience member is dumb enough that they're missing that. But I kind of have the opinion that just because the audience is assumed to understand something doesn't mean we don't need to be shown it. And that's where I feel that was kind of that missed bar here. But
there's so many movies like that where you finding that line is hard because I hate when movies overhand it, where they're treating you like you're stupid and they have to
Inception.
I mean that could be an example. There's so many movies where there's like they're feeding you with a spoon and you're like, no, I got it. I like subtlety, and I thought this was definitely treading that line.
So
and for probably a lot of people that they did it right, and I guess I just fell on the other side of the line.
So I do want to talk about kind of Koba's rampage. Like he rallies all the troops and he leads an assault on the humans.
You could call it a coup, I think.
Yeah. What did y'all think about this battle where it's just all hell breaks loose? Yeah, like that scene where Koba like breaks through that wall of fire, just like wielding 2 assault rifles, was just so cool. I hate that he's doing it, but I'm also like that is badass.
That too, but also it is badass, and it's fun to see like him just go all out, and almost like in the heat of the moment,
this is the unhinged
he starts forgetting about his own kind. This is just a personal vendetta. It's not even about the apes
he doesn't
anymore.
Even care.
It's just him getting his blood.
Yeah, he is living his best life in this moment.
I love this for Koba.
I love it.
No,
for you.
I hate it for Koba, but also like he's like, finally, this is what I've wanted to do for so long.
Yeah, it's like, the weird thing is there's almost you feel kind of a bit of relief in this moment because there's so much tension building up between the two sides.
Yeah, even though you don't like what's happening, it's like
awful.
at least it's happening now.
Yeah, but also the perspective of Blue Eyes as kind of representative of a young generation that to some degree is privileged in their setting, but thinking, oh yeah, this is what we need to do to have, a greater world, or this is my calling, this is what I'm called to do. But then seeing just the chaos that ensues here, and that actually this isn't good, this isn't helping, this is
you're not picking sides in this
horror.
fight. You're literally just watching 2 sides fighting that you can understand both.
Yeah.
And you're just along for the ride. It's one of the few times where you don't even know who you're rooting for, but you're enjoying what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I know I said I wasn't going to bring up much CGI in this because I didn't think there's much to say, but this actually, I did see a scene or a sort of breakdown of this specific scene that I thought was really cool because in this movie, they're using a lot of practical sets in a way, but they are doing so much CGI work over top of it. In this scene specifically, they LiDAR scanned a specific like couple blocks, I feel like, in San Francisco, and then they retextured it and added in all this CG work over top of it. So it's like perfectly to scale, and they allow for the explosions in there, and it's just so
it looks really good.
The scale is massive. The pyrotechnics are insane because, by the way, the fire that you're seeing, most of which is actually not that practical, which is very hard to do, to mix practical and CG fire.
This battle sequence looks so good.
One of my favorite parts is when Koba takes over the tank, and it's actually playing out in front of us right now, and just the camera work there where it's just panning kind of 360 all around what's
like
happening in that square.
Like they're on the turret of the tank.
Yeah. I love that frame right there.
That's so good.
Also, for all you Corridor Crew fans out there, the muzzle flashes in this, I would argue, are some of the best I've seen. You guys tweet it out to them. Let them know that we think this is great and they should check it out because it's one of the big things that people critique in gunfiring is just the muzzle flashes, and it seems perfect in this. It's crazy.
And then, yet none of them change mags a single time in this movie.
Hey, whenever they cut
infinite ammo.
Yeah. They didn't get the gunplay 100% there. I'll just throw that in there.
Look, man, they got the extended heavy mags. You're good.
The dual wielding on the back of the horse was like, it should be like cheesy and terrible, but it's just awesome.
It's epic. Isn't that weird?
Just as he jumps
to get on
through
that
the
horse,
flames,
he literally
so cool.
knocks off another ape from a horse. Like, so you said he doesn't care about the cost now. This is just him going, bananas.
So good. All right, so Caesar is discovered to be alive still at this point. Malcolm and Co find him, and they bring him back into the city. He tells them that, this was not a human's doing, this was an ape. And that's kind of the big point of this movie, where it's like, apes mirror humans. Yeah. And they finally realize that, where it's like, once you reach a certain level of intelligence, this just happens. So they make their way back into the city in an attempt to stop Koba, and they arrive at his former owner, I guess you could say. Owner's...
Yeah.
He was a pet at that moment, in a way.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Honestly, though, one of the most touching scenes in this movie is when he discovers the videotape. And Jason Clarke comes up behind him and is like, who's that? And Caesar's like, a good man, like you.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I kind of shed a tear when that happened.
So
where it was like, oh man.
I think
so
like one of the narratives I like to imagine in my head is that he probably for a while, like, while he did love his owner, kind of thought of him as like, you could have done better, you know? But then upon reflecting, realized
he's seen how they've gone.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
he's all like, he did the best he could, kind of a thing, you know? And
recognizing that he's not perfect.
I kind of like that. And it's nice to hear coming from Caesar, and you're all like, oh, and then you remember all the good times.
such a
and then the window logo or the window symbol.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we kind of cut to Koba really taking this thing. I'm going to take this all on, and I'm going to make this whole revolution happen on my own. And
he does, for the most part.
Yeah. He
People start seeing that Koba may not be so good.
Yeah. He takes Ash's son, Rocket's son, Ash, and he throws him overboard right in front of Blue Eyes. He's definitely letting the power go to his head, and he is going to rule with an iron fist. Not a great guy, I'm going to say, Koba.
Yeah.
Not a great guy. Do you think this escalates a little too quickly, or is this at about the right pace that you expected? Because I felt like it was a little quick.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I understand, for the sake of this being a 2-hour movie, that you got to get there and do it. But yeah, the moment he throws Ash off of the balcony there, I was like, oh damn, okay.
Yeah.
It's like a slope where it's like it's going smoothly, and then there's a point where it just goes straight
Well, it's
up.
like he's really trying to dig deep and reinforce his will, because like all he knows is that, you know, these kind of things, violence dictates power. And so...
And it's all to kind of make, like, it's all to kind of stoke the fire under Blue Eyes. As like, okay, you gotta go back to your father.
It felt like the way you say that, it does, when watching this movie, it did feel like, oh, this had to happen so that Blue Eyes could go back to his father, because he needed to see that final thing that Koba did that made him realize, oh yeah, this is the wrong decision. I need to go back.
I love that scene when Blue Eyes, like, actually, they kind of let him in and he finds his father. And the father, or Caesar tells him, it was not the humans, it was the apes that did this. Like, that was so good.
And that's where scene. I, like, wanted more of the transition. And I guess maybe I'm the only one, but I was fully prepared for Caesar to die in this movie. Up from the point where he was shot and betrayed. Like, if he died then, like, it would have been rough, but if they had a progression properly for Blue Eyes to assume his father's place and learn his father's lessons, that would have been, I guess, proper and okay.
Yeah,
and
like a passing of the torch.
Caesar is laying on the couch, like, that's where you're talking about, did this escalate too quickly? It's because they keep cutting to the violence of Koba, and then Caesar's just kind of there, is like, okay, so is he going to die, or what's going on while he's still sitting there? So that slow to fast is kind of jarring and disruptive. And so they didn't really hand off this thing to Blue Eyes in a smooth, seamless transition either, in my opinion. So that's why it was kind of abrupt, I guess, at the end.
I think I would have liked, and is it okay to talk about the face-off between Caesar and Koba? Going along with your idea, I think I would have been disappointed if he died there, but I would have liked that final face-off with Koba being like, the conflicting thing is that his first ruling was that ape should not kill ape, but in an effort to save his species or his tribe or whatever you would call it, he pushes Koba off along with himself, kind of a thing, like, and then leaving it to his son to take up the reins, like I think that would feel poetic, I guess, in my mind, and I'm always like a sucker for poetic endings.
Well, even Maurice being the sacrifice too. If Maurice died there and Blue Eyes witnessing that would have been a good trigger as well.
Oh yeah,
it would have
exactly,
been rough.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There is some mirroring of the first movie and how Caesar with Koba hanging on the edge there, like that mirrors the bridge scene where the helicopter guy is hanging off. Caesar spares him, Koba doesn't. That mirrors that. And then the whole home aspect where Caesar's home at the end of the first movie, and then he's protecting his home. I think he says that line again. So there are some really cool subtle things that mirror specific things from the first movie, if you're looking for them.
Yeah, without being heavy-handed about it either. Talking about that scene too, I think, wasn't it Andy Serkis that said he was, with the writing of the scene, how Caesar, basically kills Koba or relinquishes him. I think he was against that scene at first, wasn't he? He didn't really like the way that played out, but the more he thought about it, it kind of made sense. And I think that's kind of like the battle I go through in my mind too. It was like, but no, Caesar, it's against your principles, but I also get it. And I think it's important to the narrative of the story that, like, there is no such thing as a perfect kind of utopian society. It's always going to go wrong because nobody's going to fall in line completely.
Fall really, and Serkis being involved in both of these things is kind of apt, because this scene reminded me of in Return of the King, where, or at least in the movie version, Gollum bites the ring off of Frodo's finger, and he's the one that stumbles into the pit to destroy the ring.
Right. Instead
of Frodo refusing to throw, that was kind of a similar, it evokes similar things where if they had chose that route that saves Caesar from making this mistake or this flaw of killing him, like he could reach down and rescue Koba, and then Koba again backstabs him at the last minute because he can't help himself. And as a result of that, kills himself. But they didn't go that route. They had Caesar make a tough call, which is interesting. It's not right or wrong, in my opinion. It's an interesting choice.
Well, also the fact that it's almost like he accepts the blame for the way Koba is. Because even before, he said he learned hate from humans, but he sort of just trusts Koba without actually trying to intervene, or we never see any interaction where he's trying to understand Koba or talk to him or communicate with him in a way that could, kind of curb his intensity. So I think like there's a point where Caesar almost kind of confesses that his flaw was he just trusted Ape without actually thinking about it, thinking that apes were superior, so naturally he could trust Koba. But that in that confession, he's sort of accepting that he allowed Koba, which was a problem, to just fester over time. And thus it was sort of his fault this all ended up happening. So it's just really interesting. Oh, I love this story. I love these characters.
Yeah,
I could talk about it for a long time.
I'm right there with you. All right, so let's talk about our final confrontation between Caesar and Koba. Caesar and Koba kind of have it out. Caesar he's been injured, but he is able to kind of hoist himself up and confront Koba, thanks to the help from Malcolm, who has kind of led him through the underground tunnels and up to where Koba is. They have their little fight. Koba finds himself on the ropes, so to speak, and their final dialogue is Koba says, like, ape, not kill ape. And then Caesar says, Koba is not ape, and lets him drop. Ooh. It's such a good scene. So satisfying, even though it's a little overdramatic the way that Koba hits that. Just the way he falls is a little over the top. But it is still such a satisfying moment.
Yeah, it's ethically complicated. They could have gone more with the Tarzan route, where Tarzan is fighting Clayton in the defense, and then, in his own rage, Clayton ends up killing himself. That could have been what happened with Koba.
I think that's a Disney perfect ending where, like, oh yeah, nobody has to compromise their own,
Ethics,
morals.
Yeah.
But that's the point of being a leader, though. Like, you end up in these situations where you have to choose the lesser evil, and it's going to compromise something.
Yeah, so in that scenario, then Caesar had to make the tough call and kill Koba. He could have pulled him up and saved him. But I think you saw the battle in his head was like, if I let this guy live,
I think
it's only going to happen again.
The message of this movie, when he says Koba is not ape, I think what we're meant to take from that is Koba is not human.
Yeah.
That is the connection they're trying to make through that moment. They're trying to draw a 1-for-1 from ape to human, where it's like...
Well, it's almost like... I would try to imagine it if this was a human scenario, right?
Yeah.
If we were with somebody who is evil and we're like, oh, we don't kill humans, and then you have to let someone drop, and you're basically saying you're not human. The fact is, you're letting your anger make you something different. You're transforming.
But when they
something.
say Koba is not ape, what you're getting from that is like, oh, he's not one of us.
Yeah.
Like he's something different. And we got to let him go like that, because I found it so effective though. Like I love that moment.
Well, it just makes me think, if you go too far evil, because everyone
it's like you're beyond reason now. Yeah.
You can't change.
Yeah. It's just so good. It's a Lion King Scar moment.
Yeah.
You're letting him go to the hyenas. But this ends, and I guess we haven't talked about how Malcolm defies Gary Oldman at this point, and Gary Oldman detonates the explosives, kills himself in an effort to save the humans, to no avail. But then we kind of end with Malcolm having his final interaction with Caesar. Caesar's about to address his ape compatriots, and Caesar kind of has a heart-to-heart with him before he sends him off into, wherever he goes. And then Caesar is kind of coronated almost as, I want to say, like a messiah figure.
There is a little something like that.
But yeah, it
he came back from the dead.
Yeah, it starts to pan out from there. All the apes are kind of bowing down, and then we kind of cut to credits at that point. How do y'all feel in that final moment?
We got a third movie on our hands.
Sad.
Yeah. It's like another iteration of, the good times are gone now, kind of a thing.
Golden Age is done. Yep.
Yep. But, that's pretty much how I felt about it.
2019. It's gone. We can't go back.
It does a good job of just establishing him as the person that you look back on in the future of the Planet of the Apes franchise, where it's like, yeah, Caesar is immortalized at this point. I think this movie immortalizes that figure. Even though there's another film after this, you get the sense that Caesar is this really important figure in this story after this final shot. So, yeah. With that said, I think we are done with the story. So let's take a quick break, and on the other end, we will get into our brief reviews with numbered scores, talk about what critics thought, then get into some box office, and close out with some franchise talk. So we'll see you then. Welcome back. Let's review Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. David, you've got our scores there in a bowl. Why don't you pull them?
I'm pulling. First up, Irina with a 9.
Yep.
Nice.
I think this is definitely better than the first film, but I love that it can seamlessly, if you watch these movies together, it seamlessly follows up the first and improves upon those elements. Also continuing this kind of a social and philosophical contemplation. And the work done as far as CGI goes is definitely improved, but not so improved that it is a huge difference, you know? I feel like that could kind of take me out of the story if they dramatically changed it, and they don't. I never expected to get so engaged in a story that was about apes. I'm honestly surprised because when Reese first brought up this franchise to me way back when, I was going into it thinking like, oh, I don't know, it's just gonna be a bunch of apes like hitting each other and stuff, whatever. But you kind of forget that you're watching apes sometimes. You just kind of get immersed with all the dialogue and the storyline. So yeah, I'm sticking with a 9.
Nice.
Alrighty, next up is AJ with an 8.
So, I have a confession to make. I watched this movie and just been busy, so I had to watch this movie in like 3 different segments.
Oh yeah.
So that disrupted the flow of it a bit. So that factored in. Because on paper, I know I should really like this movie more than I guess what's apparent. I still think some of the characters, especially the main characters, Malcolm and Caesar and Dreyfus, I think they could have had a finer point. I think they were still a little bit too subdued and flat. But there's a lot of, kind of behind the surface or underneath the surface that's deeper, that's there. But I guess, maybe if I watched it in one sitting, I would have appreciated it more. But I don't know. Some of it didn't stick as cohesively or as memorably as I feel like the formula should have. I really appreciate the director's approach here, Matt Reeves. I mean, this has all the ingredients for something right up my alley. I mean, Matt Reeves, I have an appreciation for. Gary Oldman, of course. I really am a fan of Michael Giacchino and Andy Serkis. I mean, and all this is really good. It's just there's still some of the lack of impact or gravity and some of the character depth that didn't come across to me that I wanted more. And I would have appreciated it more, I think, if from a narrative approach, if we had, and they do mirror, there's foiling, a literary, I don't know what I'm saying, the parallels between the ape side and the human side. I think if we had more of a kind of generational context that had a centered tension on, let's say, Caesar and Koba, that, Caesar's as a product of his circumstance, but he's trying to make a better world for his son and pass on this better society. And Blue Eyes, his development, I didn't really get fully, as they could have gone that approach a little harder. And then Malcolm with his son Alexander, like, I got the approach that they're leaders in the sense that they're trying to make things better. You have the symbolism of the final confrontation between Caesar and Koba. Caesar's using the metal plate as a shield, and Koba's got the rod. It's that perfectly sums up their styles and their approaches, but they can still be successful to further their race and their survival and bettering their world for their son and the rest of that. So if you extrapolate that, I don't know, I feel like they could have delved a little bit deeper. And Alexander, learning from Malcolm and overcoming whatever his shyness and weakness was in the society and over his grief and stuff. Like, I feel like if they focused more deeply on Malcolm and Caesar, what they were dealing with internally, having some kind of conflict of how do we treat each other versus just, doing what it takes to survive. And then they're bounced against Koba and Dreyfus, who take the opposite approach. And then we see those lessons imparted on, Alexander and Blue Eyes. That would have been a little bit deeper, and we still had a fun, great action movie that's, awesome to look at. But that's just personal approach. That's narrative stuff, but I still think there's an edge of it that was lacking. So.
No, and I totally see that too. Yeah. Like what that point you're making.
But yeah, that's a lot of rambling to say that I appreciated this more than, I don't know. I think that is the same thing with the first movie, that these movies are better than what they are on the surface, but you have to dig to get to it.
All right. Next up, David with a 9.
Nice.
Yeah, similar to Irina, I never thought I would get this invested in monkey movies and apes.
Woo!
It's a weird magic trick because I'm trying to think of an analogy. Nothing's coming to mind, but for example, I've seen both Rise and Dawn now, and I loved the experience of watching them. And then later, I think, the other day I was going to do some research, and just thinking back on it, I was like, I don't want to research monkey movies. Like, it's when I'm not watching them, I don't want to watch them, even though I know they're masterpieces, and it's on in the background now, and I'm like fighting to not pay attention to it because it's so good. I don't know what internal biases I have against Apes that even when I know it's good, I don't want to watch it. But it's a magic trick. I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. It's as good as it can get for this kind of movie. Something that it tackles that I think other movies don't is the fact that there is so much gray area as a leader and in wartime, in leading people, and just it's almost more human than a lot of humans in other movies. I know Irina sort of touched on the fact that in other movies they make the humans black and white, evil or good. This is for apes and humans in this. It's just there's a lot of moral gray ground that they cover, and you have to read between the lines. A very hairy situation. I am going, bananas. You already used that. I can't use it anymore.
I've used that about 10 times in each episode, so it's all right.
Yeah, I might as well use it. It's just, I really like the depth. I really like underlying empathy in characters, and I almost don't like the bombastic sort of storyline that you get in a lot of action movies. And this is, I guess you would qualify it as an action. We've talked about this in the first one too, where it feels more like an action than if you break it down, it might not actually qualify. But it touches all the right spots. All right, I got to restructure that phrase. It hits all the right... No.
It hits all the right notes.
Yeah, there you go. I like that one better. Yeah. It hits all the right notes. I enjoyed this movie, and I think 9 is exactly where it deserves to fall.
I love.
Was it rewatchable,
David?
It is rewatchable, although if you ask me tomorrow, I might not say it is, because this weird effect that I have where the second it's not on screen, I don't want to watch it again.
So it's not rewatchable like a movie that you gave a 7 out of 10 called the Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, yeah.
Yeah.
That one. Mm. I have a surprise for you in that regard. You guys will see later. No spoilers.
Okay.
People out there maybe on Patreon might be saying something. We'll see. If I can ever convince Reese to get our Patreon going. And next up is, and last but not least, Reese with a 9 as well. Okay, we're there's some syncopatico.
Simpatico.
Thank you. There's a word.
Yeah.
I think you were also throwing in the word syncopation.
I was.
I might go up to a 9.5, honestly.
Boo.
Like, the more I've been thinking about this movie, the less I can fault it. I think this is just an excellent examination of humanity and just what it means to be human.
Just
even
a
though
Cracker
it is
Jack film.
like, yeah, even it's envisioned through ape, though. You know, it's like, what does it mean to be human, but through ape? And that's what I like about this movie. Caesar is one of the best motion capture characters of all time. Like, I think this solidifies Andy Serkis as one of the best of the best. I think Caesar is, and this is controversial, I think it is a better performance than Gollum.
If you want to hear more on this, we may have an episode for you.
I think he is... it's so good.
No, we're not getting into it now,
No, it's
but
so
there
good.
is we have a whole like 30-minute episode of us debating his performance in mocap for Caesar versus Gollum.
So, going into this trilogy, I used to think that War for the Planet of the Apes was the best of the three, which is the third film in this trilogy, which I have not rewatched for this series, so that remains to be seen. But Dawn of the Planet of the Apes really rose in my estimation for this, where just watching it again, I was like, I don't know if I can fault this movie. Like, I really like it.
You've
so
already
much.
heard some faults.
I've heard some faults, but also I love it. I gotta say,
You're a monkey bias, man.
No. It's not just me loving monkeys. Like, this movie is so well done. It is the way it ramps up tension and the way it just kind of makes you feel for the humans and the apes at the same time. Where the way it like balances its characters, where you do feel for some of the humans and you do feel for some of the apes, but there's also these other characters on both sides, the humans and the apes, that mirror each other. It's so good. Like, I think this is the perfect, almost like Shakespearean Planet of the Apes movie, and it might be the best of the trilogy. I have not rewatched War for the Planet of the Apes yet before this for this series, but Dawn of the Planet of the Apes has definitely rose in my opinion. I think it's excellent.
Can't wait to see what your opinion is on War.
Yeah, so I am gonna up my 9.0 to a 9.5 for this. I really love this movie.
I mean, it's a great movie, but I really feel like you're trying to bolster this.
No,
franchise.
I'm really not. Like, because I was watching this again. I've watched it twice this past week, and it's hard to fault it for me. I really love this movie.
Fine.
So, yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. Was mine the last one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
I want to
let's,
know though, like, does the sequence of the titles make sense to you guys? Like, isn't Rise and Dawn roughly synonymous?
No, here's the thing. The titles for these movies are all kinds of messed up. Like, I do not like how these movies are titled. Like, I think this one that we're watching now should be called War. This should be The War. And the first one should have been called Dawn. And the last one should be called Rise. But, whatever. It's fine. I don't care.
Well, that was just a
They
side
feel
note.
more like buzzwords than
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a group average of 8.9, which, let's see how that stacks up against everything else. Okay, so 8.9 ties it with A Fistful of Dollars. And It, Chapter 1, is at a 9.0 above it, as well as Leon the Professional. And just below it, we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo at 8.8, and Tropic Thunder also at an 8.8.
Very, very good company.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's about right.
Girl with the Dragon
I lied.
Tattoo.
Tropic Thunder was 8.6, but close.
I still think Girl with the Dragon Tattoo got a little shafted, but overall, just really, really good company.
Yes. All right. So, 8.9, you said?
Yep, 8.9.
All right. Let's go into what critics thought. This movie has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 88% from audiences, with a Metacritic of 79 out of 100 and a audience score of 8.2 out of 10. On IMDb, it has a 7.6 out of 10. So overall, positive to very positive reviews for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Let's move on to box office. This movie released on August 5th, 2014. Also playing in theaters at the time were Transformers: Age of Extinction, Tammy, 22 Jump Street, and How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Ooh, the best one.
Yeah. So, what did this movie make worldwide? Let's start with you, David.
What was the budget again?
170 million.
Ooh, well, they definitely got a third. I'm gonna go with 720. Going big.
Arena?
600.
Okay. AJ?
I guess as the downer of the episode, I'll go low, 500.
All right.
And then we have Noah's.
Yep. What
At
was Noah's?
650.
650. David, what was yours again?
720.
David, you're the closest.
It's been so long since I've won this game.
Yeah, this movie made 710 or 711 million.
Nice.
Massive hit. Honestly, this
That's
is
convenient.
the biggest hit that the Apes franchise has had thus far. Did extremely well. Even though its budget was like almost doubled from the past film. Definitely made up for it. People loved this movie. Very well reviewed. Had a great reception. It had a good multiplier overall at the box office. So it is no surprise that it ended up getting a sequel. Sequel being The War for the Planet of the Apes, which came 3 years later. And, surprise, surprise, that's what we're talking about next week. War for the Planet of the Apes. Are y'all excited?
I am.
Not really. But I bet you I will be when I start watching it.
Yeah, not a lot on the franchise side of this, because this is like the biggest success of this franchise, so obviously you're getting a sequel. It set up a sequel. No surprise at all. So yeah. Next week, War for the Planet of the Apes. We'll see y'all then.
Apes do not want war.